Welcome to the Tech Simple podcast. Independent insights into the latest AV technologies, as well as tips and best practices to optimize AV solutions for modern workplace and learning environments. Here are your hosts, David and Jonathan from Konnectus AV Consulting.
Great to be back, Dave, for another podcast. What are we going to be tackling today?
Hey, Jonathan, it is great to be back. Look, today in this podcast, we're going to be talking about end-user uptake of AV systems. And specifically, what I mean there is you might be listening to this, you might be working for an organization, or you might be an end user, and you might think, we've got all these new AV systems, but not many people are using them. The end user uptake is a lot lower than we would hope. And generally there's some reasons which we see time and time again. There's actually three. If we've got time in the podcast, we'll talk about a fourth. But there's the top three reasons why the end user uptake is low, and we're going to go through those together. So, Jonathan, why don't you tell us about the first one?
Well, the thing that I hear all the time is it's just too hard to use. There's too many steps. There's too many buttons. People walk into a space and they're confronted with a whole heap of buttons. It's almost like the Starship Enterprise, and all they want to do is, start their lesson or start their meeting. But it's really too hard. Why does that happen? Why do they end up with systems like that?
Look, it is a good point. And I suppose if you think about it, I walk into a room and I'm confronted with this control device, and it might have maybe 3, 4, 5 steps that I need to follow just to get up and running. And that's just too much. I mean, people get put off by that straight away. Once they've done it once or twice, they sort of don't want to have to go through that again, in case they maybe press the wrong button and embarrass themselves in front of their colleagues or an important customer or in front of the students that they're teaching. So we want to be avoiding that. And I think it comes back to design. So if you can come back a few steps and think, all right, the original design, has it got simplicity? And that's a key word. Can we refine these number of steps from 5 down to 2 or even 1 or even none? What are your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that's key, is that the number of steps. And, along with the number of steps, I suppose it's also about the functionality of the space. I quite often have people requesting, this functionality and that functionality, and it gets quite complicated. But at the end of the day, they might only be using 1 or 2 of those features instead of the 10 that they've got. So, if we were to remove those 8 that they really don't use, or, it's only used maybe once every 2 years, that's a way to really streamline the system and make it less complicated. And of course, you'd need less buttons to control it as well.
I guess a classic example of that is, which we see all the time, is in, presenting onto a display screen. And, people say, I want to be able to connect my device from over here and then connect my device from over here as well. And I also want wireless presenting capabilities. And you have all these different options. And the more options you have, the more complications you have, and then the more choices you have to go through on some sort of a control interface. And complexity is not simplicity, and that makes it hard to use. So that's reason number 1. Getting into reason number 2, and this is really sort of coming back to, that original engagement with the customer and talking to them about their needs. You might have rushed into solution mode and sort of prescribing AV technology solutions, which are beautiful systems, but they're just not actually what the business or the people using these systems actually need. Yeah,
I know I've been guilty of seeing shiny new tech and wanting to play with it and wanting to get it without actually thinking, well, does this piece of technology or does this tool actually help me or serve a purpose? I'm not sure. I know other people in the audience would probably be thinking the same thing as well.
Well, that's right. And it comes down to, understanding, well, what are the problems that we're trying to solve, either for the business or the school or, the students or, the end users using these systems, or are there specific goals which we're trying to work towards or achieve? We need to write those down, keep them front of mind, and then work at designing the systems and prescribing the right technology, that align with those things. And I think if you do that, you're going to be okay, and you'll generally find that people will be using the systems because there's a sense of purpose, and it aligns with what they actually need, as discussed. Right, so number 3, Jonathan, and you're really the expert here, so I'll let you do most of the talking, and that is effective training. So not just running through, showing people press this button to start, press this button to turn off, but actual effective training. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, effective is really the key word there, David. And the way that I approach this is, people come to a training session not for you to read a manual to them, not to tell you press this button, press that button. What they're really trying to understand is, okay, I have to come here to work. I have to come here to teach. How is this actually going to benefit me? How do I use this in a real life scenario that's going to give me better outcomes for my students, or it's going to make my life easier to communicate my message to my peers and my colleagues? So to be able to do that, the training really actually needs to be kind of like a day in the life. If you've got people from marketing, it's like, okay, well, what do you do in this space normally? Oh, you do marketing pitches. All right, well, let's do a marketing pitch and let's show you how you can use this technology to really elevate your pitch. Or it might be like, designers in construction. And it's like, okay, well, you guys, what do you do? Oh, you're collaborating over drawings and marking things up. Okay, well, let's actually do that together. Let's bring up a drawing that you're working on at the moment. Let's mark it up and show you how you can collaborate and make it more effective to work with your colleagues, and then, save it at the end. So those kind of practical training, effective training is the key there.
And I've seen you do that, Jonathan, and the engagement is night and day, isn't it? I mean, the people all of a sudden, have a real, I suppose, vested interest in what's happening in that training session. They can relate to what you're talking about. It's not so much about the technology. It's more focusing on how the technology enables them to go about their day-to-day business or teaching, as you say. And that's the real value add. That's what people are really looking for. And so I guess if you can open those doors and show people new features, new things, ways to be more efficient, etc., that is what sort of sticks with people and is going to increase that user uptake, which is what we're talking about here today. And I guess we can squeeze in really quickly, if there's a fourth one, change management. And what I mean by that is, as an organisation, you may sort of make some decisions around technology a little bit in isolation. So there might be some user groups, which are more technical minded or project minded, and there's not too much interaction with end users along the journey. And what happens there is, you might come up with what you think is the right technology, and it probably is, but people are emotional people, aren't they? Or they're emotional beings, I should say. And, if you don't sort of involve them and, give them just a little bit of opportunity to have their say and experience what you're doing and contribute, that can be a real shame. I mean, it's a gap that we have seen from time to time. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, an emotional connection, or at least an interest in what's happening, is important, because otherwise people are not aware. They don't really, let's be frank, they don't care. And that means they're not going to, yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the reality. And it means they're not going to use it. And it even means that, when training does come up or is offered, they're not going to see that as valuable and take the time, because let's face it does take time to learn and be involved. They're not going to take that time out of their day to actually be involved.
Well, there we have it. There are the top 3 reasons, plus a bonus fourth on what you can be thinking about to, increase that end user uptake on your AV systems. So make sure they're not too hard to use. Make sure the AV technology aligns with the actual needs of your organisation and the people. Make sure you provide effective training and perhaps ongoing effective training. And consider change management as you go through the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Simple podcast. To like, share, or discover more episodes, head over to Spotify. If you'd like to talk to us about AV in your workplace or learning environment, book an initial discovery call with David or Jonathan at konnectus.com.au. And remember,